The king has carried out his duty and delivered the second king's speech of his reign despite a year of difficulties. At his side was the Queen, whose celebrations for her coinciding 77th birthday were put on hold for the ancient state opening of Parliament ceremony full of pomp and pageantry. Charles is facing the ongoing challenge of cancer treatment, and the grand ceremonial occasion came straight off the back of a packed whirlwind two-day official tour to the Channel Islands, which only finished on Tuesday. As the king left Buckingham Palace for the House of Lords in the Diamond Jubilee state coach, he looked somber and somewhat tired as he glanced through the windows of the carriage. Camilla, in the glittering George IV state diadem, and wearing an off-white silk crepe embroidered dress by Fiona Clare teamed with a diamond collet necklace, diamond Van Cleef and Arpels earrings and a diamond bracelet, smiled as she held on to the golden hand rest on the door of the coach. In the glass coach following behind were two of the Queen's closest friends, her Queen's companions, the Marchioness of Lansdowne and Lady Sarah Keswick. Missing from the procession was the Princess Royal, who is on a phased return as she recovers from the concussion caused by her beloved horses. Dependable Anne took on the trusted role of Gold Stick-in-Waiting, personal bodyguard to her brother the King, at the last state opening. But the duty this year was assigned to Lieutenant General Sir Edward Smith Osborne, Colonel of the Life Guards. Arriving at the sovereign's entrance of the Lords, Camilla stepped gingerly down the steps of the Diamond Jubilee state coach. The day before she had been sporting a white bandage on her injured right foot after spraining her ankle. But as she lifted her skirt to prevent any tripping calamities, the Queen exposed her pointed silver shoes and her bare ankle, free from any dressings. The King and Queen made their way slowly and steadily, as is the custom, up the 26 steps of the sovereign's staircase into the robing room. Using the lift was an option, but Camilla, holding a silver clutch bag which matched her shoes, stuck to the traditional route. They emerged 15 minutes later, the King in the imperial state crown and ermine and velvet robe of state, and Camilla also in a crimson cloak. Camilla smiled as they processed through the royal gallery, but Charles was solemn as he looked from side to side at the assembled guests. They walked hand in hand, offering mutual support to one another, with Camilla's hand clasped in the King's. The King has become known for expressing his irritation in public, whether over leaky pens or lateness of family members. This occasion appeared to be no different. As the King settled into his throne, two young pages in their red tunics attempted to adjust his lengthy robe. Charles could be seen staring at his crimson cloak and flapping the fabric in an attempt to move the weighty ermine and velvet material away from his arm and over the side of the throne, as the boys tried to place it in the correct position. The King's equerry commander William Thornton stepped forward ready to intervene, but retreated when he saw the problem had been fixed by the youngsters. At the same time, a mobile phone began to sound in the Lord's chamber. The jaunty tune was picked up by the television microphones before presumably being hastily switched off. The king uttered the words, "My lords, pray be seated," before being presented with his speech and beginning to deliver the agenda for the first Labour government of his reign. It took him 12 minutes and 44 seconds to speak the 1,421 words, the longest monarch's speech at a state opening for 21 years and the most legislation-heavy speech for nearly 2 decades. There was just one tiny slip, with the king substituting the for its before quickly correcting himself when speaking of how the government will strengthen its work with devolved governments in Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland. As a constitutional monarch, the king must remain politically neutral. He gave no outward indication of bills that would have resonated personally, whether the mention of the urgency of global climate challenge, or for Camilla, who has long campaigned to highlight the problem of domestic and sexual abuse, the government's plans to have violence against women and girls. There was reference to the royal couple's future long-haul travels, the Commonwealth heads of government meeting in Samoa and a trip to Australia to which he and the Queen were looking forward, the king said. With his speech complete, the king broke into a warm smile at Lord Chancellor Shabana Mahmood, who knelt before him to collect the cream booklet containing the government's words. Charles adjusted himself in his throne, with a shake of his hand, before he began moving his robe to the side in anticipating of the pages approaching to assist. He watched intently as the boys picked up the train. Later, as the king and queen were about to make their way through the prince's chamber, Charles turned to look for his wife, who moved to his side, with Camilla raising her hand to take the king's. There was a wry smile from Charles as they processed through the blue-carpeted royal gallery, his duty completed, as guests watched in silence. Afterwards, the relaxed-looking monarch shook hands with the Lord Chancellor, grinned at military figures in attendance and chatted happily with the Duke of Norfolk and Black Rod. Camilla linked her arm through Charles's as she ventured down the staircase lined by the household cavalry, the Life Guards and the Blues and Royals. With their duty done, it was back to the palace, presumably just in time for Camilla's birthday lunch.